Hi, we're going to talk about Linux. In this chapter, we talk about ownership and permission. That's your change mode. And RWXX and that kind of stuff here. In setting ownership, this is very important. I'll say this is the most useful command you want to know. If you don't know this command or if you mess up this command, you're going to be in big trouble. As I mentioned to you before, if you have a resume, you don't want anybody else except you yourself to see it, you set up it incorrectly, then your group members can see it. You set up even more incorrectly, then everybody can see it. That's not what you want. And if you have a group project, you don't set up to allow the group to see it, they are not going to be happy about that. So setting ownership here. This is not talking about for administrator. Everybody need to do that. You have your file, you and a normal user, you have a file, you can set up you can decide it. I'm going to let myself to see it, of course. I'm going to let my group member to see it. That's your choice. I'm going to let everybody else to see it as well. That's also your choice. Setting ownership. It's very important. Talking about UID, user ID, and group ID, GID. And that you only change the group ID, then that's it. So it's no fancy. They're talking about FAT here, file allocation table. They can find it here. NFS, NTFS, new technology, file system. You can think like this is a pointer. They move a pointer. They give you a pointer. So you assign someone to your group. That someone computer account have a pointer. They can point to that file here. You don't have a pointer, you cannot see it. Another way to see it, just like URL, website address. You want to see certain website, you don't have website address, you cannot see it. That's very easy. Setting ownership in a file manager here. They can ask you here, you have a root. Then NAUTI, LUS here in the terminal. Let's show you step by step how you do it. And also have a GUI format you can use to set it up. In a shell here, change mode, change owner, change ownership Bob, and something.odf. This example showing you the ownership of this file belongs to Bob, the user's name. Linux is very user friendly. They also give you a chance to use your name, then that will be easier. Otherwise, only use the machine may not be that easier to know. In CHOWN, change ownership users. In this one, change to users and change group. CHGRP, change group of this file here. And change to dash root Bob, and that's your home directory. LS, you're going to list in long format text. They're going to show you, see this one here, dash, then it's RWX, then RWX, read, write, executable file here. Read, write, and run. So which one is you? You need to know that. Permission, number of links here, username, group name, file size. They show you read. See here? Yeah, this is the most important table here. This is me. The file type. What type of file is this? Then me, myself, I'm the owner here. I can read it. I can write it. I can execute the running executable file. My group members. So you consider yourself first. So we only always read it from left to right. We don't read it from right to wrong. So the first one is going to be you, then your group members. Can my group members to read, to write, to execute? Can anybody else in the Unix system read, write, or execute? They call this anybody else in the Unix system the world permission, group permission. That's fine. My own owner, that's me, my group, the world, or other. That's the term I use. I just use other here. The code here, normal data file, if there is dash. And this directory here, that socket file here, character device here. You see here 777, that's the code. You don't need to type it, you just chmod space 777. They're going to know you want to have a 777. This one here, read, write, executable. That's right hand side 1, 2, 4. So 1, 2, 4, that's 7. And same idea 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. So say read, write, yeah, so you only have 1 and 4, turn out to be 5, right? And this 66 here is 1, 2, 4 from right hand side 1, 2, 4. You have 2 and 4, so that's 6 here. And this one here 1, 2, 4, you have 4. So 664 means that's my file. I can read and write. I can read it, I can change it. My group members, yes, they can read it and change it. Well, other people, you can read it. I don't want you to change it. That's very good. 664. Know the numbers here, or you type in just read and write. Either ways work. Yeah. Now the question comes back to you. That's your resume. How are you going to do it? I think I'm going with 700 here. Read, write, and executable permission for the file owners only. That's my resume here. Hey, dash, 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 dash. I'm going to blocking you guys out. My group members, other people's. That's my stuff. I don't want you to see it. So that's very simple, right? Yeah. If you type your resume, if you make it 777, everybody can see your resume. You don't want that. You don't want that. So they give you some other numbers. I think you can count those numbers. You know how to do it. That's very, very simple and very powerful. To change it here, you see here. You don't need to say read, write, dash, read, dash, dash. Just change mode 644. That will do it for this file. Text file, you're going to change mode here too. Since this is a text file, it's not executable. So you have RW dash, R dash dash, R dash dash, X stuff. You have dash here. You don't. There's nothing to run. If you set it up wrong here, executable, that's fine. You just you still cannot run it here. Nothing to run. They show you here initial permission and permission here change. Oh, that's easy way. A plus X. Then see, you have this plus X. Everybody, all plus S. So all WX are dash X are dash X. So that's how you change it to change. Or as me, I probably just that's how you do it. One way. I'll just change the number, make it easier. And that's it. 777, 666. 666 is fine here for a text file here. You don't need to use the 777. Yeah, unmask mask. Let's take a look. Using the real command to show you.
Hello again, everybody. This is Jay, and welcome to video 17 of my Linux Commands for Beginners tutorial series. And in this video, I'm going to give you an introduction of the chmod command, which will enable us to change the permissions on files and folders. And chmod, or some people pronounce it shmod, basically stands for change mode.
Yeah.
And that command, the syntax is basically chmod, and then space, and then whether you're modifying user, group, or other, and then a plus sign if you're adding a permission, a minus sign if you're taking it away, and then the permission you are adding or taking away, and then the name of file. So that is basically the syntax of the chmod command. And if you are trying to change the permissions on a file that you do not own, in that case you have to type sudo in front of it. But if it's a file that you own, you don't have to use sudo. So I'm going to give you some examples of that command right now. So if I do ls-l, we'll see a list of files that I have in my current working directory. So just to go over this one more time, I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I've gone over this a lot, but I really want to make sure that you understand how permissions are laid out before we go modifying them. So basically the permission string, or the first thing that you see when you do a listing, is broken up into 4 groups. The first group is only one character and is either a dash if it's a regular file, or it's a D if it's a directory. So that's what the first part of the permission string is. And the second part here pertains to the permissions for the user or the owner of the file. The third part pertains to the permissions for the group that owns the file. And finally, the last group here, group number 4, that pertains to everybody else or other, also known as world. So if you want to modify the permissions, you first have to find out which it is that you want to modify. So again, chmod is the name of the command that will help us out with changing permissions. And then the next thing you have to do is find out, okay, what permission is it that I want to modify? Do I want to modify the permissions for the user that owns the file? Do I want to modify the permissions for the group that owns the file? Or do I want to modify the permissions for other or world? So once you establish that, so say for example, let's say I want to give group, which is this part here, I want to give group write access, so I'll type G for group, and since I want to add a permission, I use plus, and W is the one that's missing, and that's the one that I want to add, so I'll type W. So group plus write is basically what that means, and then I type the name of the file, and press enter. And then what you'll see is that now group has the W now, so the group members can modify this file. So likewise, if I wanted to add a permission to user or the owner, chmod, u plus write, for example, to give the user write access case test, but the user already has that. As you see here, write is already there. So there's really no reason for me to execute that command. I'm just telling you, showing you basically user group or other you can add permissions to. So now, say for example, you want to take away a permission. So let's say for example, we want to take away the group permission, the write permission for group that I just added. So, okay, so since we want to modify group permissions, we'll type G, and since we want to take something away, we'll use a minus sign, and since what we want to take away is write access, we'll type W, then the name of the file, press enter, and there we go. So that's pretty easy. Now we are missing the W permission in group. So let's say for example I wanted to take away the executable or execute permissions of other. That's fairly easy enough. Other minus X. So now you see that other has only access to read. Group has access to read and execute, but not write. But the owner of the file has access to read, write, and execute. If you see R, W, or X for that category, that means that category can do anything they want. They can read the file, make changes to it, they can execute it, whatever. So another thing to note is that the chmod command is the same whether you are using it against a file or a folder. So if I do, for example, I want to take away the read access from other, so other minus R, and I want to take that away from test, which is a folder, as you can see. It'll let me do that in ls-l. And sure enough, you see the permissions were taken away just like I requested. So the point there is whether it's a file or a folder, you could still use the chmod command to change permissions of that file or folder. It goes both ways. So that makes it a little bit easier that you don't have to maintain a different command for files and a different command for folders. So that makes it a little bit easier. But when you're dealing with folders though, just like the chmod or chown command from the last video, it accepts the -r flag here. And with the -r, if you recall from the last video, what that is it's recursive. So if it's a folder and you want all subdirectories and all files underneath that subdirectory to all share for the changes to affect everything underneath the folder, you'll use the -r for recursive, and that'll go down the subdirectory tree and modify the permissions of everything. So be careful with that, because you may not want to give everyone permission to everything underneath the folder, but you certainly can by using the -r option against a directory. So another thing to mention here is that you don't have to do these permission changes one at a time. So for example, chmod, and we'll work with, for example, other again, and we will add, say, read, write, and execute. So plus R case test, it already has read, but you get my point. Let's say we wanted to add read, let's pretend it wasn't there. But we also want to do write, and we also want to do execute. So we could execute this command here, and then we could recall the command once we execute it the first time, change this to W, and then execute the command, then recall it again, and change this to an X. We could do that, but that's 3 different commands for one permission change. So what you can do is type RWX. You could just type all 3 and press enter, and what you'll see is now other has read, write, and execute. And of course, if it's a group or user, you could do the same thing. So if you wanted to do the same thing for group, we could do that. And there we go. Now everybody has read, write, and execute permissions to that folder. And likewise, or that file, excuse me. Likewise, if we want to get rid of something, just use the minus, then ls-l, and you see that I took away all of group's ownership to that file by using the minus sign instead of plus. So you could do this any kind of way you want. chmod plus R if you want to add, user plus R if you want to add read. Let's say you also want to add execute, then you can add the X in there. Or if you want to add all 3, or if you want to just add 1, whatever you want to add, you can certainly do that against user, group, or other, and then the file name. And then you could access the file and modify it that way. So basically that's all there is when it comes to the first part of this video in chmod. Now you can actually use a numerical system for changing the permissions of a file or a folder, but I didn't want to cram too much into one video. So the next video is going to go over how to change permissions numerically. So before you move on to the next video though, definitely practice with this, create some files, change the owners, change the permissions, practice doing it recursively, non-recursively, make sure that you understand it, and the next video won't be so hard. So anyway, that has been your first tutorial on the chmod command.
Yeah, I think the video is clear enough to tell you, especially in here, you have a dash, or you have directory, a file, a directory here, and you can change recursively. Remember to use uppercase R to change all the files under the subdirectory, and that's, as the gentleman warned you, that's very, very dangerous to use it. Make sure you know what you're doing here. Yep, that's all I want to share with you, and this is very important for the chmod command.